Well, good morning. Welcome to another video. This is my second video today, actually. I made a little one just before. A few people had asked me about inside my camper where I am now. Truckadillo, I call it. It's a little truck, like an armadillo, takes its home everywhere it goes or whatever. So this video, there's several things I thought, they're just little things. I thought I could put them all together in one video. If I can remember them, there's like three things. One was about Jesus having children and a life after his ministry. One was non-duality versus altruism. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, asking with your brother, which I'll do first. So one of the things in the course, it says, when you have a decision to make, you should make the decision with your brother, with a brother, right? Because you're learning, everything is unity oriented. Everything is joining. So you're learning to join in decision making as well as just joining in an idea of accepting atonement for myself, because there is a listen, learn and do component to everything in the course, right? So it's not just conceptual, it's not just theoretical, there is a doing, right? And you cannot get through the day, you cannot get through the week, the month, the year, the whatever, without doing something, unless you're an ascetic and you're just going to sit there on a rock. Which I haven't met any ascetics. I mean, I'm probably the closest thing to an ascetic, or I used to be when I lived in my teepee, but that was about 30 odd years ago, maybe more now. So you learn to make decisions together. And I had Annie this morning. This is funny. I know she won't mind me using her name. Annie sent me a message saying she just bought a house in South Australia, saying, I must have been hypnotized. That was her exact words. I must have been hypnotized when I bought this house. She made a decision about a place and then moved into it, of course, and it's not what first impressions. You always have to make a decision, like, firstly, what is it for? What is this for? Why am I making this decision? And what is it for? Is it to serve higher purpose, or is it just my own gratification that I want this or whatever? And there's no right or wrong. I mean, you get the results of your own thinking either way, and that's how you learn, right? So, but when you make a decision with a brother, it is always, and I was reading this in the course this morning, actually, of course it had to show up because that's the way things happen in salvation. This morning, about when you make a decision with your brother, it will always be perfect, because that decision is reflected through the idea of joining, or through the narration or the coming together of two minds. And what's actually occurring in that is, and this might be tricky for me to explain, and you can transfer this to everything, and I don't want everybody to jump up and down going, wow, I see how that works. Now I can have more money and more everything, because that's not what I'm telling you, even though that may come about. But and no, it's not the secret. It's not manifesting or anything like that. But what happens is, because I find myself in an experience of separation, separated from my brothers, separated from life, the universe and everything. Where am I? What am I? What's it all about? Help. Is there even a God, right? Separation. And then you go through this whole process of healing, which is the spiritual journey. And I use that word loosely, journey, the spiritual application. And part of learning in that is recognizing that my brother out there is not out there. My brother is representing a mirror of something I don't want to look at in my mind. Everything outside of myself is a projection of what I don't want to acknowledge as being my reality, right? It's an exclusion. It's a projection out. So even the good stuff, right? I project out. I look on the world, and then within everything that I've projected out, I decide the better and the worse of it and try to stick to the better and avoid the worse. But it's still, the world still symbolically represents, through shapes and images and storylines and everything, still represents my denial, right? The whole experience, the whole world experience is one of denial. So when I actually choose to rejoin, when I choose to ask a brother, what do you think about this house or this pair of pants or where we should go for dinner, etc., whatever, what I'm actually doing in that situation as energy or as frequency is including back in that which I've denied, right, in favor of just keeping in my consciousness that which I think is acceptable to me. Okay, so I'm learning to trust my brother. I'm learning to look at what my mind has previously projected out as being rejected, and in that situation, in that equation's a good word for this, in that equation, I've got the yin in here and the yang's out there. I bring them together and it makes a whole. Right? I ask my brother's opinion on the decision, and together my idea and the one that I've rejected, represented by my brother, comes together, okay, and forms a whole idea in my mind. Right? Now, Jesus says in the Course, it will always be the perfect decision. When you make the decision with your brother, it will always be the perfect decision because you are joining, right? The decision isn't made in separation. It isn't made from self-interest. It's made in the made in the interests of joining together. And I want to try and consolidate what I'm trying to explain here a bit better. Just give me a second. I'm looking for. And technically it doesn't matter, right? The script is written, the storyline's written. You could say, let's say you make 10 decisions throughout the day with 10 different brothers. And you'd be like, well, how can those 10 different brothers represent the 10 anti-decisions that I would once have made, and now I'm bringing them back and we're going to make the whole decision, or the separative decision, now make the whole decision. It doesn't matter who the brother is, right? It doesn't matter whether they're spiritual or not. It doesn't matter whether any of that stuff. It's simply the fact of inclusion. I'm including my brother. And you have to be honest about it. If you've already made up your mind about a decision and you're asking your brother out there what they think, etc., but not really including their thing in, if they don't, like I've made a decision. If you agree with me, that's great. If you don't agree with me, I'm just going to ignore you anyway. What's the point of that? That's not critical thinking, not Socratic thinking, which I was talking about in the Charlie Kirk video yesterday. You have to have another reference point for your thinking to have critical thinking or Socratic thinking or Christ-mindedness, which is, I've got another way to see things, but if I'm not willing to actually apply how it is that I want to see those things, and I've made up my mind already, I'm not truly asking, then I'm just kidding myself, right? And I just had Rosie this morning. I told her about Annie's house thing because Rosie's been sending me, as some of you guys might know, I haven't signed anything yet, but I've just entered into an agreement to buy a house up at Glen Innes for the purpose of making it a brother's house. And I did ask for very specific. I just got to pop up Teddy's birthday. Oh, happy birthday. I'm sure he's laughing about that in the celestial arena as much as I'm laughing about it down here. But I did ask very specifically, and in the process of that asking, I was invited for coffee with a local church minister. I can't recall how that came about, but I think I left a post on their community page just introducing myself. I like to do that when I go to a new place. But anyway, I was invited for coffee, and during the course of the conversation, I was in that town to look at this particular house, right, for the brother's house. And in the course of that conversation, prior to going in and meeting the person and sitting down for coffee and everything, I sat quietly for a moment and I offered the whole situation to Jesus, right? Jesus, let your words come from my mouth, not my own. I do not want my ego to precede me in this situation, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for guidance on the house. I'm looking for guidance on moving to this area. I'm looking for whatever it is. To be honest, I didn't really know if I had any expectation of the meeting or the outcome of the meeting. I wasn't too sure. I know that I did want to bring up ministry work in the area, which we did. We talked about that briefly and other stuff. But with regards to the house, I never got any kind of clear direction of, oh yeah, that'll be a good investment, or nothing like that. Nothing that confirmed what it was that I was thinking. I didn't have another brother with me that was familiar to me where I could say to them, someone who knew what a brother's house was. I'm sure this person probably got the idea, but it just didn't seem to quite, the square peg didn't quite go into the round hole. And anyway, so I sat there, and at the end, she wandered off just before we left the cafe. She wandered off to go and talk to one of the ladies she knew behind the counter. And I was in the cafe looking at things for sale, and there was a book about the standing stones, which the town is quite well known for. Celtic Circle of Standing Stones. And I picked up the book, not with the intention to buy it, just curiously, and I sort of flipped through the pages, and then I had a moment. I just thought, like, why am I here? And I, or what am I really here for, I think was my thought. I can't quite recall it, and I just opened the book fully to the page that I was sort of flipping through. I was just sort of flipping through pictures. And on one page, it just said, "Build it and they will come," which is, I forget who the original, I can't remember if that's a Bible line from the Bible, or I think it is, but it's also a quote from Field of Dreams, the movie Field of Dreams, which my teacher Ted was particularly fond of, and I remember him giving several teachings on Build It and They Will Come. And when I opened the book, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like boom, and I started laughing, and it just felt so good. And I took that as my sign, I took that as my confirmation. It's like, all right, let's do this. Let's buy this house. Let's turn it into what it needs to be, and so we can represent the course, have it as a whatever. And I was actually going to be doing that with Annie. Like, we had this idea together for quite a long time, to build a place or get a place for brothers, and have it as a kind of a hub for everything course related, just whatever, where people can live, people can come and study, people can do whatever, get books and, But Annie decided to step out of that and for a moment and go do whatever she had to do, which is perfect. I mean, it's all perfect. I mean, obviously there's learnings and things goes on. It doesn't matter which way you go. And so I had to do it on my own in a certain sense, I mean, God goes with me. But one of the other caveats in the decision-making process, which it talks about in the course, is Jesus says that in the absence of another physical brother, ask for me to substitute for your ego. And I did. That was before I went to the meeting. I asked for Jesus to step in and take the place of that other brother, which is joining. And all that's doing, in a sense, is keeping the mind open to the possibility of something else to occur without knowing how that's going to occur. I mean, I had no idea I was going to be picking up that book, flipping through the pages and, boom. And when it's the guidance of the Spirit, because it feels right. And you could just say to me, yeah, but you wanted that decision to go in your favor, Dave, blah, 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 blah. I didn't, right? So I was completely open to the whole thing going in my favor or against my favor, and I had no expectation or no inclination to make a preference either way, right? And I was honest about that before I went into the coffee, and which I knew that was going to be a culmination of things, representing where I was at with that decision making. But it's about the joining, right? That decision making is about the joining. Everything seen rightly is about joining. Everything seen rightly is about higher communication. Every decision that I make throughout the day, I mean, this morning I had a really good one, right? So I laugh at all this stuff because you get the results of your own thinking, and you'd think by now I wouldn't be so dumb. But so where I'm camped here, just about 5 minutes walk up the road. This is like a little bush camping area. It's off the side of the road, you know, and people pull in and come and go. But up the road there's a little township, and it's only like 2 streets. It's a tiny little place, but there's like 5 coffee places. I mean, coffee has taken off like it's an addiction in Australia. I don't mind a coffee in the morning, but coffee and a bagel and whatever. But I don't know what these coffee places are like, right? Or whether they serve the kind of coffee that I go yum, 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 or like hot milk. But this morning I just thought, I really need a good coffee, you know, and I thought I'll just try this one. And I went there without asking, right, without here asking, and I just got the large flat white with 1 sugar like I always have, and it was awful. It was perfectly awful. It was the worst coffee probably I've ever had from the corner place. And I remember thinking to myself, I should have just asked where to get the damn coffee from. And so I went across the road and put it in the bin. And I stood there by the bin for a second, and I just asked, and it's like, all right, where am I going to get my coffee? You know, and just let it in. And I just stood there on the corner, and on that corner, directly across the road was the place that I'd come from. Down from them was another coffee. Down the other way on that corner, there was 2 more coffee places that I'd walk past to get to the one on the corner. And there was another one up the street. And who knows if there was any more around the block, I don't know. But I stood there for a second, and I don't know if you've ever seen a weather vane, how it points which way the wind blows. And I just felt the energy, right? So the energy just made me just sort of like this. And it's hard to explain if you've never had the experience. You just feel drawn to it, feel directed. And I felt my energy just shift, and it pointed me to this coffee, you know, directly. I found myself staring at it down the street, and I had this sense, that's the one, you know. It's just a sense. Sometimes communication's not directly audible and whatever. It's just a sense of things. And so I went down there, got my coffee. Perfect. It was exactly how I like it. It was just... And I remember the story of Helen Schuckman, you know, when she was channeling the Course years ago in the 70s, and Jesus was trying to get the work done through her, and she kept delaying and doing things and putting things off. And one day she had to go and find a coat, or she had to go to some function or something with Bill. She needed a coat, and spent the whole day going from store to store to store and couldn't find the right coat that she wanted. And in the end, I can't remember if she found it at the end of the day or if she stopped and asked for directions from Jesus and he guided her. I can't quite remember how that played out, but I remember in the book, in the notes, Jesus sort of berates her for wasting a whole day. Said, I could have directed you exactly to the coat that you would have perfectly liked, right? Because God knows what you want before you ask, because you're part of God, you know. So he says, I could have directed you there to that coat and saved us a whole day. We could have been transcribing and taking, you know, shorthand or whatever. So spiritual guidance is something that you kind of learn about it as you go along. At first it seems like a lot of nonsense. What do you mean I've got a higher guide? What do you mean there's the Holy Spirit? What do you mean there's this, you know, that I can be directed from outside of or separated from my own conscious deliberation between decision making, between different thoughts about things. And it takes a minute. It takes a minute to understand that you have this kind of sixth sense. It's often said that women have it more than men. Women are more perceptive or more have more intuition or whatever. And it's kind of like intuition. It's very much like intuition, but it's multifaceted. Sometimes it's just a sense of things. I've heard audible voices and things, and first time you hear it, you think, what the hell was that? Even when I heard the voice driving in my car once, and I looked up in the rear view mirror to see if there was somebody sitting in the back, and it just blew me away. And then, of course, you think you're going crazy and you can't tell people about it, and you realize that all these things that occur, the more you keep an open mind to including the higher nature of life, because we're not just here to eat, sleep and die, but the more you include that in, the more it seems to show up, right? The more you seem to become sensitive to it. And so when you read the Course and it tells you about decision making, at first it's hard to rectify that, and it's hard to remember to make a decision with somebody else rather than just on your own, because by the time you reach maturity, you feel quite okay about the fact that you're able to meet the world on equal terms and you can make your own decisions. When you realize that those decisions are all made in separation and all made from an objective point of view of the false self, you start to realize, hang on a minute, I seem to be going around in circles doing the same thing again and again in a different scenario. And you'll find it's the same thing in a different scenario wherever you go, because you take your own mind with you. And if your mind is not healed, if your mind is still operating from the point of view of duality of mine and yours, me and you, better and worse, and all of those sorts of things, you're not going to perceive the opportunities that you would if your mind was healed and whole in those things, where you just are your true self and representing the true nature of your own divinity, seeing everyone as not separate from you, not better, not worse, just is, right? Just the acceptance of things as they are. And that's something, because we have preferences, right? In separation, we have preferences for things. I prefer this instead of that, which is the duality. You spend 50% of the power of your mind avoiding or deciding against half of a whole section of whatever situation you're in. I don't know if that makes sense, but right. And it's very difficult to be open-minded to something that you've already made a decision against. Right? Oh no, I don't like that. I don't like this, and I don't like whatever. And so you reject it and you stay with the half of the equation. I prefer this. I like that, whatever. And so when you do make a decision, you don't really perceive your own best interests, because you've already judged it as being something that you've told yourself you don't like, especially if it's got a strong repertoire in the past. I've had this coffee this many times and I've told myself I don't like it. I've been to this cafe, this whatever. But what if they've changed their coffee blend? This is a new moment here and now, right? What if they've changed their blend? It was a different barista or whatever. I mean, it works with everything, So every moment is brand new. And if I don't look at it with the past on it, if I don't look at it with my preferences on it, right, then I can allow for something else in my open-mindedness to be able to be presented to me, where there's a chance that I can recognize that perhaps I'm making the wrong decision. And I hope that makes sense. When you make a decision with a brother, you can never make the wrong decision, because you are bringing the two halves of an equation together. Your mind has already projected out into the world what it doesn't want, right? That's what the experience of separation is. That's what the human experience is, the human condition. I'm experiencing only half of myself. That's why I feel empty inside. That's why I feel like I need someone else to complete me, or I need something to, alleviate the anxiety, drugs, alcohol, whatever, all of that sort of thing. And you feel it. You feel this inner emptiness, and we call that existential anxiety. But you have to heal that within yourself, using externalized things, drugs, alcohol, people, whatever, to try and fill up that empty gap never works. So anyway, that's I only covered one of those points. So anyway, just to add to that, I haven't yet signed anything on the house since I'm talking about it, but I haven't yet signed anything on the house. It is going to need a complete remodel inside. It needs a whole new kitchen. All the carpets are coming out, and the floorboards I've discovered the floorboards are hardwood, so timber, so they're going to be polished up in the living areas, new carpet in the bedrooms, new paint throughout on the inside, probably do a major reno on the bathroom. The house was built in the 60s, and I don't think it's had an upgrade since. So a couple of people have expressed interest to help me do the house. However, I am asking for help, but I am asking for help from people who are competent with the workbook, who have been through all the workbook, because I know the nature of people coming to help is that in part they will want to come to help, to be with me and help them learn also in their course learnings, which I'm open to, but primarily at the beginning I want to get the work done. So if we I tend to rabbit on for hours sometimes about some things, but so if we're continually stopping to talk about Course in Miracles or spiritual determination or anything like that, it's not that that's not perfect also, but let's just get the work done. So if you're keen and you're handy with some tools or a paintbrush or whatever, please get in touch. If you'd like to contribute financially, please get in touch. I mean, I do have enough coins in the bank, thank you, Lord, for to buy the property, and then we'll just have to see how it goes for the renovations. But the kitchen even has carpet in it, like not a shag carpet, a loop. I think they call it cut and loop or something, carpet, which is orange, bright orange with yellow flecks through it, like from the 60s. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I was going to talk about non-duality and altruism. Somebody asked me about that the other day. Angela, I think it was Angela. Why does that name pop into my head? But and I'll make a little video about that. There's not a whole lot to say. And there was something else. I might have to go and watch the start of my video again. But make a decision with your brother. Make a decision together. That's what these things are for, and you learn by getting the results of your own thinking. And what can seem like glossy and perfect on the surface, because you're making those decisions from a half mind, from a divided mind, you're only really seeing what you want to see. You're not seeing what's actually there. It's like with Annie with that thing this morning. She said, I feel like I was hypnotized. And I know how that feels. It's like there's a veil over your mind, which there is, that doesn't actually allow you to see what it is. It allows you only to see what you want to see, right? Because you've rejected from seeing what you don't want to see. And that's how that works. And you can and and argue about it all you want, but that's how it is. I love the way Tina puts it. Tina always just qualified it for him. She says there's like this density to your consciousness that you can't see through it. You just only can see so much. You need a whole-minded view. You need your brother and you to join in that viewing, in that seeing, in that decision making. And it's really important, unless you want to keep getting the results of your own thinking. I mean, if you're a stubborn learner and you just got to learn by banging your head against the wall again and again, so be it. But salvation is joining. And if you're not joining for the high, and this is another thing, I'll just add this. If you are not joining for the highest purpose possible, the highest, your highest appreciative aspect of joining, right? So if I'm aware, let's try to put this, it's got to be a total thing. It can't be partly. I can't be like, I'll just have it partly for my brothers and then this part for me and whatever. It's either all or nothing, right? So now if I'm aware, let's say in the case of a brother's house, if I'm aware in my mind, I already have an idea of that and what that looks like, and I settle for less, then, if I decide to contribute less, if I decide to offer less than my whole heart, my whole mind, my whole power, my whole self to any decision, then I'm not putting anything, I'm not committing to that decision at all. It's either a total yes or a total no. And when I say to you guys, I want to commit this place to be a brother's house, so any of you can come and stay, and it's only 3-bedroom, might get a bit squishy, but any of you can come and stay, and we're going to go through whatever we go through together, right? That's exactly what I mean. And I don't know how that's meant to look. I'm just saying yes and keeping it open. I'm not going to say, no, it's not going to look like this, or no, it's not going to look like that. I don't want it to be a teaching place, or I don't want it to be this, or I want it to be only that. I got no idea about all of that, right? I just want to keep it open, right? Whatever it's meant to be, it'll be. But anyone who don't use deodorant, you're sleeping out the back. I've lived in brothers' houses before. They've all had a list of basic requirements sort of stuck up on the back of the door when you walk in. So when you walk out, nobody has to tell you what the deal is. You're just like, oh, clean up after yourself. Oh, wear deodorant. It's like, all right. That's about it. I think I'm going to have to make another video. Damn. I'm here in this place for it's a very pretty little spot. Anyone who watched my video that I made this morning outside, there's all these little purple flowers, birds and bush turkeys and stuff. Snakes. But it's lovely here. And then in 2 days, I will be back in the other caravan park that I was in a couple of months ago. Seeing that all brand new again as well. So that'll be interesting. And I'll be there until the house comes to fruition. That's it. All right. Love you guys. Peace.